Other things that we can do with our utilities, okay, there are some other tools up here that we want to talk about a little bit. I'm going to go back to all, okay, just going to go back to all right quick. I'm going to organize by my supplier. And there was a supplier in here that I wanted to make an example of to utilize the tool split item. Usually a split item is only going to be when you have a quantity of more than one. And that would be a perfect example where I had purchased 10 quarts of transmission fluid from the supplier, and then I've said I wanted to return them. So what if, and I know this is a crazy example, but it's the best I've got to work with, what if you're only going to return 5 of those quarts today? And this could be brake shoes, it could be spark plugs, it could be tie rod ends, it could be whatever. Unfortunately, all I've got to work with right now is the transmission fluid. So broaden your imagination a little bit with the demonstration. And what if I'm only going to send back 5 of these today, regardless of what the part is? Highlight the item, select split item, and you notice your face value quantity is at 10, okay, but maybe I'm going to only do 5. Well, what happens then is you now have split that into 2 what we call batches. So I now am going to take the 10 and split them up into groups of 5, okay? And now those items have been split up, okay? So here we see 5 of them, and here we see the other 5, which used to be the 10 a while ago. So if I'm only going to send back partials, not all of them, then I can split them up, and now I can say only send these 5 back, and create the credit slip. So you have those utilities. It may not happen on transmission fluid, but it could certainly happen on hard parts. So keep the split item in mind, which allows you to split up quantities over or greater than 1, so you can do your proper returns. Let's go back to my supplier good parts and on time. Let's talk about some of the other tools that are in here. How about we look at this part right here? Okay, somewhere in the process, we bought this item because it's listed as a purchase, okay? And now the supplier says, no, I'm not going to take that back, okay? So if they're not going to take it back, then you're going to most likely going to want to move it into your inventory. To move it into your inventory, highlight the item. From the menu above, select Move to Inventory. You'll usually always be prompted to say, the solver is going to ask you, are you sure this is what you want to do? So I encourage you to read these messages because we're trying to ask you a question. So always take the time to read through the message. Okay, when that's the case, it comes up. Now, the way this works is it looks at the part number. Let me drag this down. It looks at the part number on the item from your return bin. If there is a matching part number in your inventory, then it's automatically going to bring that item up. So do I want to move these 10 or this 1 case of oil filter back to my inventory? Okay, so I'll just highlight, that's the item I want to move it to. Keep in mind, make note of this CH10358 in the background, and when I say apply, okay, if I go back to that supplier, those items have now been moved into the inventory. So regardless of how they got in the return bin, the supplier is not going to take them back, or I simply decide that I could use these at some point in the future, move them to inventory. They'll then be available to sell. I'd like to take the opportunity to show you a different one. Let me try this coolant thermostat. No part number on it, right? So if I want to move that item to inventory, okay, I'm going to answer yes, that's what I want to do. Look, it didn't have a part number. So it's not going to find a no part number in your inventory. I could do a search on it. Let's just say an example. Sorry about that, folks. I forgot to disconnect my phone here. Okay, so what I can do with this is if I knew the part number, I could do a search on it. Or if I know that item is not in inventory, I have the ability right here to click on Add, which would be add a new inventory item. Simply like adding an inventory item from anywhere, simply identify where you want to put it. You guys know about the definitions, I'm assuming. If not, we'll bring that forward on another webinar in the future. Put in your part number. Sorry, let me just get that in. Put in your part number. Okay, it already brings over your description from the definition. Identify who your supplier is on the item. Okay, I think it's that supplier. All right, and now I'm going to be able to move this item into inventory. Let's do a save. So I've created, I'm going to say no, I'm not going to do any sell prices right now, but I've just now created a brand new inventory item. And what I want to do is move, oh, that was an oil filter. This is a thermostat. Sorry, guys. Regardless of the point, let me just go in and do a thermostat right quick. I'm going to put that down under my cooling system. Okay, we'll do a definition. Okay, and that's going to be an engine coolant thermostat right here. Let's put in a part number. Okay, and I have now created, okay, a new inventory item. I'm not going to worry about pricing right now. Okay, and I'm going to take that item from the return bin and move it in as a new inventoried item. Click on apply. That item has now been moved into my inventory. So keep in mind, if you're going to take an item and move it, okay, it's first going to look for a part number in your inventory. If it's not a match, then you may have to look for a different part number or add it as a new inventory item. You do have that capability to move it in. Other things, other tools that we have that are on the screen that'll help you with your return items is we see quite often where mistakes were made and we have a physical item we want to return, but we didn't get it entered into our software. Again, when that happens, you most likely have another problem with your payable accounts because you probably never registered that you purchased that item. But if I need to add an item that is not in the software, I do have the ability to select add a found item. You can identify your supplier. It doesn't default to the supplier you're looking at in the background. Okay, so identify who your supplier is. I'll pull test supplier number 1. The part number on the item, 123 ABC. Put in your description, okay, and whatever the item is, okay. Put in your description, the manufacturer if you want, the type. There are 2 types of items we store in the return bin, return parts and return cores. So whichever it is, quantity and your unit cost, okay, and let's just say these cost me $25 each. So I'm now physically going to manually enter an item into the return bin for this supplier, 2 brake drums with this pricing. As far as your general ledger, I'm assuming everybody knows whenever there's money involved in the software, you're going to have to post that to a general ledger account because we need to track all money incoming, outgoing, found, lost, doesn't matter. What I've done in my system is I have created an expense account. Okay? I'm not sure it's in everybody's system, but what I've done is I have created, let me go back up a little bit, a special account called Return Items Lost and Found. So if I post all my found and lost items into this one account, then I know all those monies from add found item and delete lost item are going to be under that one account. Although it is your choice, you are at control of what account it gets posted to, and we'll click on OK. Okay, so for test supplier number 1, there are the 2 brake drums that I just added as a found item. I just found $50 essentially is what this means. Obviously, like I said, there's another problem somewhere because if you bought them, I'm sure the supplier billed you the $50, but maybe it just didn't get entered properly. We also have the ability to delete lost items. If you had an item listed but you can't physically find it and you're not going to get a return for it, then you're most likely going to have to go in and delete that item. I'll just grab the oil filter right above it. I had it in the system. I can't find it in the bin. So to keep my system accurate, up to date, keep my bins in order, then I have the ability to delete that item. All of the information above is drawn from the information in the background: part number, description, quantity, pricing, cores, the whole 9 yards, okay? And again, you are in control of where this item gets posted to. Okay, so what I can do is just do a quick search on this, try and utilize some of these new features. That's the account I want to post it to, and now that item is gone. Okay, so let's review for a second. Create credit slip, or what's more commonly referred to as a return slip. Split up when you have quantities of more than one where they're only going to return partial items. Move any items to inventory. It'll look for a matching part number, or you can create a new inventory item. Add a found item, delete a lost item. The only item that's left on our menu is show item detail. If I take any item, I can select, and if I want to see the details behind this, then I select show item detail. This item was purchased on supplier invoice number 1. The supplier was test supplier, okay, and the supplier invoice has been posted. So any item that you want to look at in here, select the individual item, select show item detail. It'll tell you the supplier invoice number it was purchased on, the supplier that you bought it from. If that supplier invoice has been posted to the payable account, this item went into materials, inventory. It'll give you the part number and the description. So if you ever need to know more than what you see on the screen, keep in mind that that information is always available for you. I was mentioning earlier, you also have the ability to print. So if I wanted to print this list, okay, for the supplier driver to sign, okay, then I have the ability to go over here and do a print. I'll do a print preview for you guys so you guys can all see it, okay, and it's just going to list those items. So it's going to give you the supplier and the individual items, pretty much what you were seeing on the screen previously. So you can print these off too if that's anything you wanted to do. Let's go back to the PowerPoint for a second and just do a quick review. Items to be returned. Use your search parameters. Use one or any combination. Okay. I like to search for all suppliers and use the column headers to sort and group by. Like I was showing you, bring up all the suppliers, bring the supplier to the top so it'll group by, and then you just open up that supplier. Use your column headers to sort the information. Remember, you can click on any one of the column headers to organize. And then your menu options, which are create a credit slip, move to inventory, delete a lost item, split an item with quantities greater than 1, add a found item, and show the item detail. Hopefully that's going to help you guys manage your returns a little bit better. Let's move forward then to the return item credit slip. To set the stage for this, we only work within the return item credit slips once the items have been returned to the supplier. You no longer have possession of them. So again, use your search parameters, any one or any combination. Now the parameters are just a little bit different on the return item credit slips. Okay, but again, I can go by individual supplier, or I can go by all suppliers. And when I click on search, what this is detailing to me is these are the suppliers and the return item numbers and the status for items that the supplier has picked up. I'm hoping you'll be familiar with this one because that's the one we processed a few minutes ago. And I'm going to go up and select edit. When I go into edit at this level, I have several tools to work with. Again, at this point, I'm normally processing the credit slip, the official credit invoice from the supplier. I have the credit slip number at the top. Very important would be the date, which should match your supplier credit slip date on the actual paper copy. And I have the supplier. Below, I have all the details of each of the items that I'm expecting to receive credit for. Sorry for the U.S. guys. In Canada, they are billed a tax on their purchases and they receive a tax credit on the returns. In the U.S., most of us are tax exempt, so there's really no tax involved. So don't let this disturb your thought process. Things that we can do from this stage. Let's say I've got my credit slip back and there's something that needs to change. First of all, usually your credit slip number is going to change. This was the return slip that I was given, or wasn't given actually, when the items were returned. So that is normally going to change. To change your credit slip, simply click the box, type in the credit slip number. Okay, and if you'll watch in this credit slip field when I apply that, so now I've registered the actual credit slip invoice number. Identify the date, and of course your date can be changed to anything you would want to change, and that should match the date on your actual supplier credit slip invoice. Okay, we have the ability at this point to make adjustments. So if I do not receive full credit for the $63, then I can go in and select adjustment. Maybe there's a restocking fee, maybe they didn't do something right, but I have the ability to make an adjustment. Keep in mind, a positive adjustment is going to add to the money that you receive. So if you actually receive $64, then you're going to make a $1 adjustment. When I process that, you see it'll automatically come in. And again, the taxes in Canada are going to automatically calculate. If you're in the U.S., don't worry about that. On the other hand, if I take the adjustment and I'm short, I only get a $62 credit, then I'm going to make a negative $1 entry. And if you'll watch the summary down here on the lower left, you'll see that that says, you were shorted $1 on that. So your adjustment allows you to adjust to the actual credit slip, okay, either an increase or a decrease. Let me just take that out now that you guys have all seen it, okay. We also have the ability to do a tax adjustment, again, mostly for the folks in Canada, okay. If there's an incorrect or a rounding error on the taxes, you do have the ability to come into your system, check the box, and make any corrections to any tax adjustments, because sometimes there might be a rounding. So I'm going to change my $3 to $2.95, and you'll see that change gets reflected. Other activities you have, what if the craziest scenario happened that that item should not have been returned to that supplier? Highlight the item in question, select Edit, and you have the ability to move that item to a different supplier. So if by accident things progressed enough and you finally realize, hey, that shouldn't have gone back to that supplier, I can easily correct that right here by changing it to a different supplier. I can easily correct it by changing it to a different supplier invoice. So you're not locked in. You do have the ability to make the corrections. Okay, I'll go ahead and move that one item off so you guys can see this in action. Okay, so now you see I'm down to 3 batteries. Lastly, if the supplier says, you know what, I can't give you a credit for that battery's destroyed. So you're not going to get your $15 core credit. Then you have the ability to remove it. Now keep in mind, removing it is going to remove it. It's not going to delete it. Removing the item from here is going to put it back into the returns, items to be returned. So it's not deleting it, it's moving it backwards to the items to be returned. So if we select the item, select remove, you see it's now moved back into the return. So now I'm hoping that my credit slip is right. So remember your tools. You've got a credit slip adjustment, you've got a tax adjustment. Surely your credit slip number is going to change, and you see mine came back to the original. You have the ability to take a single item and edit it, okay? And you have the ability to remove the item from the credit slip, which will put it back into the items to be returned. Let me just correct my credit slip number here right quick. And we always tell everybody, make sure you verify this information and make sure it's accurate before you post it. Now, if I don't want to post it at this point, I do have the ability to save my changes. The phone rings, it's time to go to lunch. I can save it, and it will save all the changes I've made at this point. But most likely what you would do at this point is simply go ahead and post this item to the payable account. When you post a credit, you have several options. How did you receive or how will you receive the credit for this item? Usually if you bought it on credit, you will return it to the supplier and get credit back from the supplier, which then shows up on your statement at the end of the month. In some cases, when you buy items, you pay for them with a credit card. If they're returned, usually your supplier is going to put the credit on the credit card you used to purchase it. Bank account, what if the supplier wrote you a check? Maybe you paid them when you bought it, like a COD supplier, and when you return it, they issue a check for the return. Okay. Actually, excuse me, the bank account is going to be a direct. I apologize. The bank account will make a direct deposit to the bank account. Here would be if the supplier gives you a check back. The check would go into the cash drawer, which you would reconcile at the end of the day. And down at the bottom, oddly enough, we still have cash, okay? So if the supplier gives you cash back, which is highly unlikely, but it could happen. So you have these options to choose from. In my case, I buy most of my things on credit from the supplier, so I'm going to post it to the payable account. And now that item is done. Notice it identifies a posted date. On your searches, you do have the ability to search for not posted, posted, or all. So an example of that, if I went in here and said I want to look at this supplier, okay, and I want to see all, okay, it's going to bring up everything that's been processed for that supplier, going all the way back to 2014, as you can see from the dates over here. Okay, I can look at not posted for that supplier, which I don't have anything here. Remember, the items are still back here. And then, of course, I can look at posted. So I can always search these. And by the way, guys, I do have the ability to open those up and see the details if that's anything I ever needed to do. Let's go back to the presentation for a minute and do a quick review. So in your return item credit slips, search all suppliers and use the column headers. Don't forget about sorting with your column headers, where you just click on the column header, and then your menu options for a credit slip adjustment, edit the credit slip number, do a tax adjustment, edit the line item, post the item, or excuse me, the posted date, post the item, and then of course the save options. So hopefully that'll be some stuff that you guys can take advantage of.